Hello and welcome to sim.bc, where it is 14:30 and today I had my final French exam. Yes, it is done. The rest that will come forth these upcoming weeks will just be smooth sailing from here up until Christmas, because all the things that I have to look forward to right now is the presentation in enterprise and leadership, one exam in negotiation techniques, which is what we're going through right now, kind of ish, one part of it, with the cultural aspects, HR and team management, that stands for human resources and team management, of course, and we also have management and information systems coming up, but they all are bland, like they all seem so bland and not colorful and not difficult when compared to French, because that's a language I can't operate in. However, in these upcoming, courses and these upcoming exams, we will utilize English, which means that I have a vast vocabulary of words which I actually can use. Many things at my disposal that I can utilize when moving forward. Now look, I even have me watch off this time. Who said that I can't be planned, right? So that's what I've done today. It was the oral, it was the understanding of like a reading exercise, a writing exercise on grammar, and a listening exercise. It was all fine, all good. What can I say? It's French. I don't know if I look tired. I am tired. I woke up at like 7 this morning and went to school. I thought I'm gonna go there quick and at the beginning of the day and study before the test. Did I study? No. What should I say? I thought like this. If I don't know it 40 minutes before the test, what are the odds that I'm going to learn it before the test? And I know that some people will memorize like 3 steps or something and go into the exam, and directly when they get the paper they write down those 3 steps. I've done it myself. However, you don't learn much by that, now do you? And you really want to learn it in order to utilize it in a discussion later on maybe. Now this is language, it's much broader, much bigger, much harder to do in that way, but I still considered it to be like, well, if I don't know it now, I probably won't know it later either. So I watched the series instead, the only one way of preparing, to like mentally compose yourself, to get to a even level. But that's not why you're here today. No, it's not. You're here today for the usual reason. I shouldn't say the usual reason, but for the reason that you've been coming back here for the last couple of days, mates. And that is because we're going to go through some more culture. I know I'm always clapping. I don't quite know why I'm doing that. Just started and now I can't stop. It's just with the watch and with this and drinking and the lamp in the evening and I have my rituals, you have yours. Don't judge. So today we're going to go through some of Fisher's, I wouldn't say definitions, but players in a way. And then after that, we're going to go through players and the situation. So this is, the first one isn't really players, it's what we should consider in a cross-cultural negotiation by Fisher, or according to Fisher rather. So without any further ado, let's get started. So the first thing that Fisher mentions is the players and the situation. And the players we're going to go through in a bit, and so will we with the situations. The other one is the style of decision making. Yet again, this is leading back to what we discussed yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, with how are we making a decision? How are we taking a decision? What are different cultures' approaches on taking a decision? Because many different cultures can be very different. For instance, when is a decision made for you? Is it when the contract is signed? At the end of a discussion, at the end of a long discussion perhaps, with people saying yes and no and you going back and forth, and then you finally have it signed in writing, that's when it's done. That's when you have taken a collective decision with all of the other players on the market. Or is that the start of the decision making? That might sound strange to you if you are anything like me, but apparently in some parts of the world, the actual negotiation starts when you have signed the contract. So for instance, we had this guest lecturer who came from India, or he mainly operated in India. He was the head of global sales, I think, in HBSC, something like that. I don't quite remember, don't quote me on that. And he constantly referred to how nice it was to be back in Sweden. Now, why did he do that? Well, because when he was in Sweden, it was quite easy to understand that when we've signed something, that's what goes, That's the rules. We've like come together, we've discussed, and we've come up with a rule set. Now we've signed it. That's it. That's the decision made right there. However, when he was operating in India, they came up to a product price and amount of units that would be delivered at a certain amount at a certain point in time, and that would continue for a sequential amount of, I don't know, 5 sequence or 6 cycles or something. However, in India, when he signed the contract, then according to the people who worked in India, those companies that he was working with, I was going to say Indians, but I don't think that's the correct term. Anyway, then he started to work with, then they started to work with him without his knowledge. So he thought like, oh, we're gonna get them at date X. However, they didn't arrive. So he called up the company and asked them, why haven't you like delivered as we said? And they said, well, we really tried to, but we couldn't. And apparently in that culture, according to him, an outsider, a Swede like me, coming to this culture, so you have to bear that in mind, he said that his interpretation of the culture, as he presented it to us, was that as long as you have a good excuse in India, you're allowed to get off the hook, in a way, when it comes to delivering on time. So there's a distinct difference in when a decision is made. So the styles of decision making, not so much the style, but different perspectives on decision making. Then we get to the next one, which is national character, which is yet again, when you have a cross-cultural negotiation, what is the national character that you're dealing with? Yet again, good to, if it is a short term, or if you're just there for the first time, or if you're going to be there for a short while, look at the stereotypes so that you know the no-goes. You don't want to do like stuff that's inappropriate if you're not going to meet them again. However, if you're going to meet them again, well, you don't want to do something stupid for that sense, but at least then they can correct you and you won't do it the next time, and they can see that you've learned. But also see at the national characters, who are you dealing with, why are you dealing with them, and how are you dealing with them in the way that you do. Then we come into cross-cultural noise. Now this is something that is really important, and I'm going to combine it with the last one, that is interpreters and translators as well, because when you have two different cultures not clashing necessarily, even though that is the norm, but meeting rather. You have two people, right? Two people from two different cultures, and they're meeting. Most of what they're going to say is going to be, what should we say, distressed. It's going to be drowned by the cross-cultural noise. And that is that, for instance, I'm going to India, going to negotiate with a guy there, and all that I can think of is how different we are. Not necessarily that I am consciously thinking about it, but that takes up a big part of my brain power, of my brain capacity, of my, what you would say, of my concentration. Takes up a huge portion of that until I've learned to adapt to that culture. For instance, in school right now, since we're in France, and even though we've been here for a while, there's still a lot of cross-cultural noise when we discuss things. They take for granted some things, I take for granted others, and then we just come to no real conclusion, even though we made one. And that is really important as well. Even though you come to a decision, yet again as we discussed previously, or if you come to an assumption or a decision, people can be like, have way different interpretations of what you've actually decided. And that is due to the cross-cultural noise in the negotiation, that people have said one thing, the other people have agreed on this, but what they have agreed and said, according to the other parties, are way different than what they intended. So if I say something to you, you might interpret it in one way, whilst I was meaning it in a completely different manner. Just as an example. And then this is also lost a lot when you have translators or amplified, because translators can't translate everything, the tone of voice, the way that they're saying it, the what you would say, the sassiness or the greed in their voice. Some things you can read on their voice, how they say it, the tone of the voice, the nonverbal communication that they express. But however, when you are relying on your translator, you're only going to be as good as reading the person in front of you as the person is translating it to you. And some things you can't directly translate. What if they say, for instance, and this is based on you not knowing the other person's or the other nation's or the other parties, I would say, that's a better word or better term, the other party's language. There might be some things that they say, like what should we say, different sayings. It is, that's the word in English actually. So there might be different sayings in their language that isn't directly translated into your language. So your mate here, the translator, the one who is your rock in this negotiation, have to translate something that isn't directly translatable. Now this means that this person has to think about which words are the best ones to use, and they have to provide you with the information. And then, based on what you think that they meant and based on what you think their interpretation of the other party, you will have to come up with a response that they are going to translate, that you think, and you need to think, how will they translate this and how will it be interpreted by the other party based on how the translator will perceive it, receive it, and transmit it. So this is all cross-cultural noise and cross-cultural barriers, I would say, and this is Fisher. Then moving in quite quickly then into players and the situation. So negotiators view process from a cultural dimension. They have different cultural dimensions that they're from, and they view a process of negotiation from these different dimensions: the power distance, the uncertainty avoidance, all of these Hofstede's dimensions, and Trompenaars for that matter. Form of the negotiations, protocol, and hospitality required. Now this is also, if you come from a low context, high context, are you seen as a jerk or are you seen as overly nice? And does that make you suspicious for the other people that are from low context if you're from high context, or vice versa? Are you not competitive enough? There are lots of stuff to take into consideration when it comes to hospitality and protocol. And form of the negotiation, are you going through it in a sequential manner, or are you more polymoniac, the word from yesterday, when you are working with, are going through several points at the same time, or are you going through one point at a time? Differences in what negotiations expect from the social setting. That is also, yet again, when we're here, we are demanding, or not demanding, but we're assuming a certain amount of respect due to my position or due to my company, whilst in other parts of the world, they will have either no clue about your company because they haven't done their prep time, or they don't consider it as being worthy of upholding, or even better, they think that they have upheld it, whilst the other party does not think that this form of social pro quo is up to standard with what they had expected. So even though they tried to adapt, it was too little, or it might be too much, and the other party will think, from the respected company might think, well, what are you trying to make up for here? So you need to try and find the right balance, right? What do foreign negotiators consider a tension-free environment? This once again goes into saying that if you're from high context, low context, high power distance, low power distance, high uncertainty avoidance, low uncertainty avoidance, how you are in avoiding problems overall, or are you very forcing on your problems, are you very direct, very indirect? Is you from a masculinity point of view or femininity point of view in the Hofstede's dimensions, not a gender? There are so many things that you need to take into consideration, and somewhere you need to find like a middle ground, because it is impossible, almost impossible I would say, to try and calculate and account for all of these different variables, and this is just for the country itself. Then you have to market it to the individual and then take into the consideration the actual corporate culture behind the culture that's influencing the culture and the individual's perception of the culture, and then they have their perceptions of what your culture is. So will it be hostile in relation to what they were expecting based on what they think that your expectations of their culture is? There are so many things to take into consideration here. So it's a very complex, really complex thing to just set up the meeting and the environment so that it actually fits the negotiation. And at last, national styles in choosing negotiators and negotiating teams. Now, one person might think that, or one company might come from a nation that thinks it's very, or if the nation is, influencing the corporate culture a lot. But let's just say, for simplicity, you're from a company that thinks that, well, we're going to send one strong guy or one strong girl who's going to symbolize what we're about. We're independent, we're strong, we can make it in this world even though we're a startup, let's say. However, the other party thinks that you were supposed to send a team, because when you only send one person, they think they're inexperienced, they didn't account for that this person could be sick, they didn't account for making a unified front. Maybe they can't send more people because they don't have a clear point of view of what their cultural and mission statement is. There are lots of stuff to take into consideration yet again when it comes to players and the situation. And I know that I said yesterday that I had a bit of a thing here that I filled in yesterday or 2 days ago now, but that will probably be for another time since we don't have time today. So, without any further ado, sounds like I'm going to take up another point. Have a nice one, mates, because that was everything from me today. Tomorrow we're going to look into that and the styles of decision making. So, have a nice one, mates, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a nice one.